Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, I would call the Minnesota Timberwolves the Suns' kryptonite, but I'm not sure of any team that they could beat right now. Unfortunately, 116-118, 116-98, I should say, loss once again to a Timberwolves team that has now beaten the Suns 7 straight times. We will break that game down, but we got a lot more big picture to dig into next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen post-game on a Sunday night, maybe kicking off your week here on a Monday. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. More from FanDuel later on in the show. Joining me once again from a unfortunately much louder Phoenix Suns arena, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling, Ben Garcia?
Yeah, I was just telling you that the last episode we did here against the Pelicans game, our audio was really good, and we were like, oh, it's probably because they lost. You know, it's a little bit dimmer. Well, we've got another group of, I'm assuming, high school kids just hooping on the court.
A bunch of very cool-looking
they all look,
high school kids.
They all look much better dressed than me.
Yeah.
I just watched one kid hit a half-court shot. That was pretty cool.
There's a couple taking a little mid-court photo. Yeah, everything's happening here. Again, 116-98. We'll spend one segment on this game, but a lot happened since the last time we recorded. Devin Booker made his comments. We discussed that at length. Then Mike Budenholzer has had a chance to respond. Devin Booker has had a chance to clarify and explain himself. And John Gametime added into the mix, so we will do a lot there as well. What did you think of this game? I have something that's 30,000 foot, but what's your biggest, what are you going to take away from this game?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm going to take away, and I leaned over to you and I had said this to you, was, man, you see what this Suns team can be in spurts. I go back to that Lakers game. I think it was the second game of the season where the Suns were just running them out of the gym. They ended up losing that game. But they just were putting up buckets and putting up in a hurry, and they were getting out in fast break. And I think you saw that tonight, too. In the first quarter, they were just getting after the Minnesota Timberwolves. They were up at one point, I think it was 23-8 in the first quarter. And then what happens after that? 4 straight turnovers that turn into 10 points. And it's just like they're teasing us. We saw what they could have been against the Grizzlies a couple of nights ago. Now, the defensive thing, we never thought they were going to be great at that. But offensively, we see what they could be.
Yeah.
But they just can't put it together for 4 quarters. And this Timberwolves team, it's like the bully that keeps stuffing them in a locker. Once they get going, the Suns are just depleted, man. Like they have no answer to what the Timberwolves were doing tonight when they started to get downhill. I don't remember how many exactly turnovers the Suns had tonight.
I think it was 20.
I had said to you at one point in this game, I was like, oh my God, I think they're going to have 20 turnovers tonight. Because they were at 50.
20.
So they're at 20 turnovers throughout the whole game.
Well, that says 22. The official one that I got printed says 20.
So last week, I can't remember what the statistic was, but it was something that wasn't super big. But I noticed yours was wrong by 1, and this had a different number. Now, regardless, it doesn't really matter. But
2,
20,
not good enough.
They could have had 18 turnovers, and that's awful. So they just continue to show us what they could be in 5-6 minute stretches, but it just never materializes, and I'm not too sure why. Because leadership doesn't have anything to do with that part. So
I think, it's the roster. This is a team we learned last spring when they got swept that the league is trending toward what Minnesota is, not toward what the Suns are. And
what would you say that is? Just so people
Well, we've talked about it every time we've watched this team. We've talked about it every time teams like this play them. I mean, you just said it, physical and downhill and,
Long.
teams that can basically use their physicality on both ends of the court to outmatch what the Suns are. The Suns started with 34 points in the first quarter, and after that, 64. So that is the epitome of what you're talking about, where the offense was there, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And obviously you could try to say, okay, well, when Durant and Booker aren't both out there, blah, blah, but they never got it back.
No.
And the turnovers were a big part of why, but the Wolves they go the exact opposite direction, where they don't get demoralized or, down when even they're trailing in a game, and then you never know when that run is going to come, but they rise to that moment. And I mean, they look like the Legion of Boom Seahawks with how much they were freaking parading around the sideline.
That's a good comp, man.
They used to bother the hell out of me with that.
That's
so
a really good
sticks
comp.
with me. They're down for a quarter and a half. Halftime it was still close, and then watching them make their run, you would never have even realized they were ever down. You'd think it was the first minute of the game, and they're jumping up, and so it's night and day. My takeaway from this one is we didn't check in because there was a lot more to talk about on that Thursday night last week when they lost to the Pelicans, but then they played the Pelicans again Friday, and that was the end of my 6-game trial. I believe, what did they go, 1-5? Or 2-4, I guess, technically, because 1-5, right? Yeah, they only beat the Pelicans on Friday. That was the only one.
They beat someone. Because it was in the middle, Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Chicago.
So 2-4.
They beat Chicago and the Pelicans. How do you feel about that?
Not good. And so that's why I circle back on my line in the sand there, and I think this is it. Four games out of the 10 seed right now. Domantas Sabonis just got hurt. He'll be out a week. I don't really care, because what the Suns have upcoming is exactly why I said this 6 games was going to make or break it, because they have the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Mavs, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, and then the Kings themselves, and then the Lakers coming up. So I don't think they will win any of those games, so I don't care if Sabonis is out. I think the idea of them making up 4 games right now is absolutely insane, even if
they're not making
they steal some of those. Like, they only have about 20, their record now is 28 and 33, so they have 21 games left. They're going to make up 4 with the schedule that they have? No way. So,
they're going to win 4, much less make up 4.
So that's where I'm at. I mean, I really hate to do it. I gave it a long time, but that's just where I am. I don't think the math's on their side at all, and their schedule, and they don't look like they want to win a single game right now. So why would I say they would?
You're a better man than me. I gave up on this team about a month and a half ago. I was talking with one of our many value.
By the way, I did too.
But
they're
you were
eliminated now.
Yeah.
Like, it's over.
I was talking with a media member here when we were watching the team warm up, and he was like, I think the Suns are going to win tonight. I go, what gives you that reason to believe that? He goes, I'm always optimistic. I go, this season's been over for about a month and a half now. We're just waiting for the offseason. And he told me, he goes, really? And I go, yeah, man. He goes, what was the line in the sand? I go, how about 6 different lines in the sands? And he goes, was it the Pelicans lost last week? And I was like, it was the Memphis Grizzlies loss. Sounds like you talked to a
media member who might not have been watching a lot of Suns basketball this year. I'm not sure where you were doing your reporting on that one, but
it was just like I go, how about the Memphis Grizzlies game where they beat the Suns with their C team on New Year's Eve when I did a show by myself?
Yeah,
it's tough, man. I will continue to preach that I don't think it's going to be like this for very long. I don't think they're going to be a championship contender, but just stick with us, man. Because what we saw tonight was a team at one point where I thought Bradley Beal could save a ball in the corner. What is this? South end of the court, and
by the Suns bench,
just lets it go, man.
Yeah.
He just lets the ball go, and I'm like, oh, this team's broken. And
Nickeil Alexander-Walker stole an inbound pass right after another big basket had just happened.
Anthony Edwards, I wasn't looking, but I did see the replay. Anthony Edwards was going for the biggest dunk in the last decade. And just so we're clear, I would have done
DiVincenzo bounced it off the ground up to him like a freaking dunk contest.
I would have done the same thing Beal did. I would have pushed him over. I would have done the same exact thing. I'm not letting you do that.
But you could tell he did not really want smoke because he picked Ant up immediately.
I
was like, I'm going to body check you a little bit, but we're not doing this.
So, yeah, I was telling a different media member, I go, that same thing happened to me in high school where Xylon Cheatham, ASU former forward, we were playing him, and he was going up for a dunk on me, and I just pushed him out of the way and got a flagrant foul for it. And
yeah, Brendon avoided the flagrant, didn't he?
I would have done the same exact thing. I'm not getting put on a poster.
Yeah, so look, I mean, the one silver lining to kind of to the same point you were making is when you're theoretically a championship contender, but you underperform expectations by so much that you're like under 500, it's a lot easier to improve the next season. We're not going to sit there and be thinking that they're contenders, but the idea of them improving their record's not really that far-fetched. So it's achievable. Everybody just wants the terrible vibes of this season to go away. We'll spend plenty of time when the offseason comes getting how do we see this happen. The rest of the regular season, we just got to get through it. I do think there's still lessons to be learned and things to be watched, but it's not going to be pretty.
I was thinking of our bold predictions midway through this game, and I was like, wow, we couldn't have been more far off. Yours was this was going to be the most fun season ever. It arguably is the worst fun season ever. And mine was Ryan Dunn, Rookie of the Year. And Ryan Dunn has been benched for like a week and a half.
Like
and he's gone completely cold from the field. And it looks like he's lost his confidence. And it's just like, at some point, you just got to laugh. You got to laugh so you don't cry.
All right, we will circle back to the Wolves at the very end of the show to talk about whether and how this team might be one of the suitors we're talking about for Kevin Durant when that time comes this summer. But first, Bud and Book continue to speak about the communication and leadership dynamic on this team. We'll get there next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Bonus bets, guys. That is the deal, and it is NBA time. When the game tips off, the hoops action's just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout each NBA game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. But FanDuel offering $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins right now. So let's check out how to go ahead and get that bonus bet. Let's see, the world of college basketball on Monday night. What do we got here as far as odds go? We're not. FanDuel is not cooperating. They don't want us to win. They don't want us to thrive. Spring training bets? Is this really a thing? That's for the sickos. There's not good odds there because no one has a clue what's going to happen. You know the drill, guys. Go to the world of men's college basketball. Find the biggest possible favorite. Drop a little money there. Here we go. Duke hosting Wake Forest. Get your $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com to win your first $5 bet. $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment worth. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Alrighty, let's keep it rolling. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter if you have not already. Suns news, NBA news, fantasy advice, and more straight to your inbox. It's free for you, supports us big time. Let's get into it, Ben. Alright, so I will just start by saying that I wasn't super convinced or changed by what Bud or Books have said since. But what the most important thing to me is what Books said in the heat of the moment on Thursday night. Because since then we've heard Bud say, we talk a lot. I don't know exactly which meeting, the Chris Haynes report, that I guess we didn't even talk about that, did we? We didn't even talk about that.
So I was going to say, the kind of chronological order of things that has happened is Booker had that press conference, and then I was the one that was like, he's talking about some players. I didn't even think about the coach. Then that morning, Gambo had said, I think Booker was pointing at the coach. I sent it to you, and I said, he knows something. This is clear. And then literally like 10 minutes later, Chris Haynes comes out with the report that Budenholzer had a meeting with Devin Booker, telling Booker to be less vocal, which is crazy. And then Bud answered,
that was when Bud basically, because Chris Haynes' report was very specific that they had a meeting, whatever. And so Bud basically said, oh, we talk all the time. I'm not even sure what that would be referencing, blah, blah, blah. And then Book kind of said the same thing.
Yeah.
And I just don't buy it. It feels like they're kind of gaslighting us a little bit there. It's like, well, Book was clearly frustrated. One reporter is being very specific about what he's talking about. And then you guys are basically like shrugging your shoulders as if nothing's going on here, kind of trying to get us to not pay attention to it anymore is what my feeling was. So do you have anything beyond that, or is your reaction from what we talked about Thursday night still mostly kind of where your head is at?
I'm a little disappointed in Booker because I think it's pretty clear whose camp leaked this, and I think it was Devin Booker's camp. And I never thought we would be trending towards an off season where I think Booker is going to flex his muscles a little bit in some way, shape, or form, walk into Ishbia's office and say, it's either me or that guy. And I went from 3 days ago, and you tried to save me, and you said, maybe don't speak in definites. And I was like, there's no way Budenholzer's getting fired. Yeah. And I'm not going to speak in definites. But my now 100% chance that Budenholzer stays is now at probably 50-50. Because I do think that's what we're trending towards, is a Booker going to Ishbia and saying, me or him, man, and we know who they're going to pick.
So you think it's bad enough specifically from Booker's standpoint that he would push it that far?
I didn't like that it was leaked to the media now. Like, why could it at least wait till the season was over? Like, any hope that you had in that locker room, which probably wasn't much, that you could get this thing turned around. It's what I've been preaching for the past couple of weeks. Like, it's just annoying. People got upset with me because I got mad at KD for talking about this in a podcast. Look at me now, getting mad at Devin Booker. It was very disappointing that I thought his camp likely leaked this. Things get out.
Of course they did.
Well, exactly.
No one else would have.
People don't understand that things get out if people want it out. Things don't just get out. Yeah. And so when that happened, it's like, okay, 4 coaches in 4 years. Like, that's what we're going towards.
Yeah.
Well, Gambo's already leaking out potential coaching hires.
Well, he's not even just doing that. He's talking on his show as if Bud is gone. He called him miserable to deal with as far, not from his own experience. He was saying that that's the reputation that he's basically heard that Bud has had since he got to Phoenix. And yes, he's talking about coaching options, replacement options, I should say, and he is, giving some examples of Bud just kind of not rubbing this team the right way.
Yeah.
I don't think you're wrong. I honestly just don't even know if it's even going to get to the point of Book having to do that, right? Like, I kind of think if what Gambo is saying is true, I don't think it's just Book who has that problem. Now, we'll have plenty of time if that comes to talk about whether that will change anything. And I think you and I are both on the side of there's a lot more problems. And I think most fans would even agree with that. Like, it's not just Bud, but I'm skeptical that the coaching change is going to do much of anything, to be honest with you, because like you said, it'll be 4 in 4 years. And a lot of the same issues we would have said this team have been similar, at least for the past 2 seasons. I mean, the year before it was 8 games of KD and Brad wasn't around, so that's hard to compare to. But I don't know. It's weird to me that even the players are looking so much at the coach, given that it's such a mirror image of last year, rather than being like, let me look at the stuff that's the same. Because the problems are the same, so the cause of those problems is probably the same.
I know Ishbia is a billionaire, but I can't believe that there's let's just call it 50-50 chance right now that Ishbia could be paying 4 coaches next year. Or I'm sorry, 3 coaches next year, because they're not paying Monty Williams anymore. But it'll be Vogel, Bud, and then someone else. My problem is for the people that blame.
And he would have been paying Monty for part of this time. He just got lucky there. So
he got lucky because the Pistons.
I think Monty's contract would have been over by this fall either way. But it's crazy.
My thing is just what frustrates me about the blaming Bud, which maybe he's miserable to deal with. I don't know. I think I have heard that before, since before he came to the Suns. He's a little bit of a hard ass. But my thing is the people that blame Coach Bud.
Yeah, there was a thing earlier this year about, I think it was DeMarcus Cousins had said something about the little bit of time he had spent in Milwaukee.
I do not remember DeMarcus Cousins as a Buck.
He was toward the very, very end of his career. Yeah.
the thing is, like, the people that get mad at Bud because of his rotations, because whatever, and, like, I'm okay to listen to that. The issue is, like, it's the same people that get upset with the roster construction. And I'm like, you want the guy to figure out everything and the team to be better, but you also say the team sucks. So I don't know how all that goes on Bud. You can't have it both ways. Either the roster construction sucks or the coach sucks.
Well, it could be both.
It could be both, but the issue is...
last year, Monty was not a great coach, and the Pistons also had a terrible roster. This year, they improved both, and they're better, Like, it can be both.
Listen, it can be both, but the thing is it's been 4 years or 3 years now of different coaches, and we ran them all off for the same reasons. Vogel's adjustment sucked. He's not using KD enough.
Yeah.
Now Bud's adjustments suck. They're not using KD enough. And yeah, man.
Adjustments is a code word for me, by the way. And I'm not saying this to say I'm better than anybody else who thinks this way, because I don't say adjustments because I don't feel like I know. But to me, when fans complain about adjustments, that's code for I wish they would play better.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what the hell they're doing.
Honestly,
the gymnastics these coaches do in game, even the ones who don't adjust, they're doing so much that, like, it can be not enough. But the idea of, like, they don't adjust, it's like you just make yourself sound ridiculous when you say a basketball coach is doing 0 adjustments.
I would agree with you.
That's their job. They're doing their job. They're not doing it well enough. But come on.
I had the wrong word. What I meant was rotations. But I do agree with you.
You were citing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
That's the complaint about Bud. You're right. That's the complaint. I'm just taking issue with it.
My thing is just like you want a new head coach, fine. Go get a new head coach. I'll say the same thing I said on the radio last year. Not going to change anything. Because to me, I think there's 4 head coaches that actively change outcomes of games. Maybe 3. Udoka might be that guy. Spoelstra might be that guy. Kerr might be that guy. Like those guys, right? I think for the most part, coaches can lose you games. I don't know how many of them are actually winning games. So I don't know if you stuck. I mean, a name that was thrown out there was Chauncey Billups out there, and he completely fixes all the Suns' issues. I just don't. I'm not buying that. I'm not subscribing to it.
Let's keep on him for a second. So, I don't get a lot of things out of the blue correct. I was on top of the Chauncey Billups things last year. I would bet you.
I thought he was going to be the coach. At one point.
There were rumors, and I was like, the Suns are going to want him, and then they did, and it makes perfect sense. And so here's my thing. I think Chauncey is actually, like, if I'm just spending a little bit of time because it's logical. His contract is ending, and we already heard him last year. It could happen. And he would be a very different kind of coach than the couple that they, Vogel and Bud aren't really players, whatever. Chauncey's like, what is he? Is he the best former player coaching? Maybe Jason Kidd? It'd be like one of those two.
I think it's just Jason Kidd.
So,
off the top of my head, I can't
that's
think
a
of
pedigree that's hard to replicate, right?
Uh-huh.
If it's true that it is both the coach and the roster construction that are causing the problems, then part of what that tells me is, because I looked this up, Mark Cuban, like, he's like the other great example people will point to of like new owner syndrome.
Yeah.
It's really rare that that new owners will run through coaches like this. Most of the time, if a guy gets hired, I think they're kind of reverential to coaches because it's like the part that they can't understand. It's pretty rare and a pretty big indictment of Matt Ishbia, I think, that he has felt like he knows best with coaches. Because it's kind of, I'm not always an advocate for hiring, for building things around players, but it's just kind of how the NBA works these days. The Bucks hire Adrian Griffin, for example, because Giannis wants him. Like, that just is what happens. The Suns have not done that. And I do have to wonder now what would have happened if they had just listened to what Booker and KD wanted from a head coach, because it was Kevin Young, then it was Chauncey Billups. Neither of those guys got hired. And if at least the ingredient of the respect factor and the motivation factor had been there with the coach, I think a lot of stuff would be different. So maybe that could be the case for Chauncey. Maybe that can be, one little hole you could try to dig and say that the coach was at fault for some of this is it was never done because Booker and KD aligned with the coach. It was just, this is going to work because it's a good coach and good players, so boom, boom, boom. But even then, I still am going to come down more on the roster side just to play devil's advocate. That I think that that coaching process has been misguided to run through so many and still never go with what your players wanted.
What's your percentage chance right now that you think Bud gets fired?
80. I mean, I think it's pretty much done.
I can't believe.
Because
I can't believe we've become the Lakers.
If the rumors are out there, that would seem to me to indicate that if Matt Ishbia was being cheap and it was not going to happen, I think we would just know that by now. Gambo would have said it. Somebody would have said it. Would have been out there, right? If Matt Ishbia wanted to shut the door and say, no, this is one too many. We're paying Bud $10 million a year. I'm not doing that for him to go be in Cabo. Then we would know it already, I think, right? He wouldn't let this noise get there.
I think you're right. Now, listen, it's only been a couple of days. Ishbia is also running another company. Maybe he does put the fire out. But I didn't see him here tonight.
No. All right. We'll close out with some trade talk. We've been trying to do this when different teams come through that might be one of the suitors for Kevin Durant in the summer, so we'll get to Minnesota next. First, today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. That's right. NBA fans, they swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game the rest of the season, you score a huge deal the very next day. It's simple. When any player drops 50 plus for the remainder of this regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Just over the weekend, or I guess on Thursday, actually, Steph Curry dropped 50 plus. Anyone who's a Dash Pass member with this deal got 50% off their order the next day. It happened. It's not a maybe. It literally happened. Maybe that is a game day feast if you're trying to watch. Maybe not. Maybe like look toward like opening day at this point. I mean, nobody's doing a party for the Suns, but late night cravings. Maybe you're up a whole night watching NBA games and then you're like, crap, I actually didn't really have like the best dinner. I'm kind of hungry. Perfect for that. Sign up for Dash Pass, be ready to save. When any player drops 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the very next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 to get this offer from noon to midnight the day after a 50-plus point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. All right, Ben, let's close it out. So the Minnesota Timberwolves, we know we're in the mix for Kevin Durant. At the deadline, I think it was one of those teams where after the Miami and Golden State stuff fell apart, we heard Memphis, we heard Minnesota, maybe one or two others that I'm forgetting, had called to basically say, hey, is this for sure a no, or could we maybe talk? And they were basically denied on that. But I think there's a question of what the package would look like, but also a very large question of, does a deal like this even make sense for a team that they just got rid of Cat for basically the financial reasons that they would be walking right into with Kevin Durant.
Well, that's exactly the question I would ask you, and I would like to start there. And you and I basically had this podcast over there, just kind of talking to it to ourselves, which I got to stop doing because we got to do a show. But why would Minnesota want to do this? And I get it, like for all the because why wouldn't Ant and Katie, they love each other? Well, like you just pointed out, they just got rid of Karl Anthony Towns, and so they're going to pay Gobert, Anthony Edwards, who's going to get a Supermax, and Kevin Durant, and they just got rid of Cat. Like, I don't think ownership wants to do that. I don't think it's a feasible spot because I don't think ownership has committed to this team like other ownerships have, like other around the country would. So. Yeah. Where are you at?
They do have new ownership, but that ownership was probably the one that called the shot on the Towns thing.
Yeah, so. I would assume so. It's like Ishbia when he called the shot on Kevin Durant. He didn't actually have the team yet, but he pushed it over the hump.
So yeah, I think it's a valid question. I'm not sure they would. I mean, to make the case would just be one, if they could move off of Julius Randle, who has a player option, which is probably looming over them. But even without the player option, even if he were to decline it, I also feel like Randle it would be tough for them to just let him walk. And so, they're kind of in this no man's land where they're looking at a situation where they might have to keep him on some kind of contract just to not lose a good player, right? So that would probably factor in where you take the hit a little bit, but you can move off of Randle. Maybe you just like the fit of Durant better than Towns or something. He's under contract for shorter. I mean, we don't know what the extension would look like. The reality is for this team, They were 16th in offense heading into the playoffs last year. They somehow beat the Denver Nuggets, even though I think we all agree they were like the worst team on paper, but they did it. Now they're 13th on offense after getting Randall and DiVincenzo.
Yeah.
So they need offense. That's why they would do it. But it's an open question how serious their thing would be here, but I think you and I both like the idea of Jaden McDaniels.
I would.
I mean, if it were to get that close.
It's not the fact that I don't think the Suns would be interested, as the Suns decided to turn up the music even louder at this point later in the show.
As people leave the court,
I don't understand. I don't understand. You know,
some of these kids were dunking. Did you see that? Pretty impressive.
Well, the Suns could have used some of that. Hey, buddy, are you 6'6" and can grab a rebound? Or defend better than, I don't know, Bradley Beal can? Either way, the Minnesota Timberwolves thing, I don't think it's crazy from a logistical standpoint. Kevin Durant, I think, fits really well with Anthony Edwards. And in terms of Rudy Gobert, who's kind of around the rim, Kevin Durant doesn't really need to work there to make things happen. Where Karl-Anthony Towns at times did kind of clog up the lane with Rudy Gobert. I don't think that's a... to me, it just comes back to ownership. But I agree with you. Jaden McDaniels would be awesome for this team.
Yeah.
I think Devin Booker, similar to LeBron James, obviously to a much smaller scale, I think with shooters is going to be great. So a Jaden McDaniels 3-and-D guy, kind of like Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges did. And honestly, if I'm being straight up with you, I'd rather have Jaden McDaniels than Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson on this team. So, you kind of do improve there. I just don't know who else you would get. Like, if you could get Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels and picks, yeah, it's over. I'm doing that trade 1,000%. But you wonder if the Timberwolves are going to want to part with Naz Reid. And you pulled out the point of, are they going to get rid of all three of their forwards? That doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think from the Suns' standpoint, what you would try to be doing here is get Randall to go to a third team.
Yeah.
You take back the young guys and picks, and you try to kind of get closer to that modern type of roster building, the one that just beat you and has your number very clearly with 7 straight wins against you now, and you try to basically just steal what makes their roster good, and McDaniels is one of the huge parts of that. I mean, the rest of it, so draft pick-wise, I'm looking, they have...
they traded a bunch of picks for Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, so Utah has their picks and swaps for the next couple of years, but it looks like they have some stuff with Detroit coming in that maybe could offset it. And then after 2028, they start to have more control of their stuff. They do have the one that they just sent for Dillingham. So they probably could, maybe 3 from what I'm just looking at here. So not, it's not going to be the pick haul of what the friggin' Jazz could give you for Durant. Not that he's going to Utah.
Could you put the Timberwolves' feet to the fire and say, we want Dillingham and McDaniels, if you don't want to part with Naz Reid? Do you think it's possible?
I kind of...
You kind of don't want Dillingham? Is that what you're about to say?
Oh, no. I'd be fine with Dillingham. I mean, it's a question mark because he's so tiny, but I don't know if you're getting toward, is that more than what the Suns gave up for Durant? A guy who they just gave up a 2031 pick who was a top 10 pick, and Jaden McDaniels, who's very, very good, at least better than Cam, on par with Mikal, probably around the same time, maybe.
There was no... Kevin Durant, it was widely reported, was only going to accept a deal to the Phoenix Suns. I think things are a little bit different this time. Well, there'll be 3 or 4 teams who really want KD that I think KD will go to, because he's not KD at 34 years old anymore. And I think he won't have that ability to say, I want to go there. Okay. So I think teams will be bidding against each other a little bit more than what we saw with the Suns.
I don't think many people were going to outbid what the Suns eventually gave up. So I think that if we're using that as the benchmark, I doubt it's going to get close to that. Because we also have to remember, obviously we would assume that the one factor here is that he might not say, I only want to go here, but he's in a walk year. So and he's extension eligible this summer. So the team that is going to be trying to get him, they're going to know through the grapevine that he wants to be there, because they're only going to want to get him if he's going to sign there long term. Nobody's going to want to really rent Kevin Durant this last year of his contract.
I think they're going to know, but I think the Suns are going to say, hey man, you want to be out of here? We're ready to move on. Give us 3 teams you'd go to.
Yeah.
And I think he'd do that. Or 2 teams. Yeah. And I think those 2 teams would be bidding against each other. And I don't think the Suns are bidding against anyone. I think that's what the biggest flaw was. You and I would still do the deal for Kevin Durant. That's not what we're saying. The biggest flaw with the Suns is they were kind of bidding against themselves.
Yeah.
Where the Nets were going to always have to trade him. So,
yeah, I mean, maybe. We also could just see something like Jimmy just did where Kevin
True.
Durant says, I'm only extending with one team, right?
True.
And he also, Jimmy didn't even get there, so that doesn't always work. But yeah, I think the whole point of us going on that tangent was to say, could you get, and it's kind of the same thing with the Rockets where it's like, you know, is it Jabari Smith is the best player you're getting back, or could it be like Reed Shepherd? I don't even know if he's better, but he's obviously a little more valuable because he's younger and just got drafted. Or could you get Amen Thompson? And you're, you know, it's kind of the same thing here where it's like, is it Jaden McDaniels and like Dante DiVincenzo, or is it Jaden McDaniels and Rob Dillingham, right? Like you're just kind of, that's where the value and like the margins of the move start to really matter, is the little differences in players and picks you might be able to get. But I think you're probably looking at McDaniels and picks as like the main ingredients to the trade.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would go with the Rockets deal then.
So you like Smith as a player more than McDaniels?
No, I
or
don't.
You just
No, I
like
don't.
the more getting the Suns' own pick back.
Well, getting their own picks back is a big thing, but also the ability to get a couple of younger dudes on this team who also play the wing ability and are young. Like they could become Jaden McDaniels. Like I don't think it's impossible for that to happen. So
that's one of the things with Minnesota is they don't have like the quantity of young guys.
No. Which is why I'm like, and I understand. Could you get a Naz Reid? Could you get a Dillingham along with the McDaniels? Can that third team facilitate a player to you?
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. So, or if we're really getting into it,
I mean, they kind of would probably have to because you still got to get to the right salary.
Well, if we're really getting into it, I kind of like the Mavericks deal the best. So we just got to wait for the Suns to lose the Mavericks, and we can have that conversation.
Well, yeah, the Dallas Mavericks, I think, simultaneously also make the most sense for KD to want to go there, and we've talked about that.
Agreed.
All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow, subscribe if you have not already. We'll be back for you throughout the week. We got Suns Clippers on Tuesday, and I guess Nuggets games on Friday, so we won't be recapping that one. But look,
Thank
the
God.
news isn't going anywhere, guys. I think the Suns have illustrated that for us. So keep it right here. We'll talk to you next time. Music stops.